Welcome back, everyone, to the Red Report. Don Williams joins Adam and I now, and we're going to talk about the Big 12 Conference, who this week kind of hit a couple bumps along the way. You know, it started on Friday night, guys, with Kansas losing a heartbreaker to South Florida 37-34.
Yeah, you know, really a great college football game. I think it could have gone either way. And I think you saw, you know, in the polls that, you know, the people who vote for national rankings, things like that, you know, they didn't really hurt Kansas for that. I think, you know, they put Kansas at number 19, moved South Florida up to 16. You know, a great game. I think both teams kind of legitimized themselves, proved that, you know, they were good programs. They were going to be forces this year.
Right. You know, and Don, I think Todd Reesing will probably be regretting that last throw for a few years down the line. You hate to see that happen to a kid like that.
Yeah, I mean, that was one where he didn't recognize the safety coming over and kind of threw the ball up for grabs down the middle of the field. Trouble for me in this game, where problem I have with Kansas is they shouldn't have been playing at South Florida to begin with. I mean, they should have remembered what they accomplished last year by going 4-0 in September against a relatively easy schedule. And I don't think really should have taken that risk of playing, especially when you have a team that's returning a starting quarterback and 9 starters on the best defense in the country. Well, it was the best defense in the country last year. To me, they should have brought someone into Kansas, got their victory, moved on, been undefeated going into conference play. Now it hurts them in the rankings.
Right. You don't think this would help them get in conference play? Just playing a tough team? I mean, I don't know. I've got to disagree with the all-wise Don Williams here just a little bit. I think you have to play tough teams. Okay, yeah, you might lose a non-conference game, which doesn't look good, but it doesn't help your program. It doesn't help your players get better.
The big thing that would help the program more than anything was last year going to the Orange Bowl and winning that one. And the way they did that was by playing 4 teams that really didn't threaten them in non-conference play. And they still were ready for conference, though.
Develop their confidence.
Once conference came around.
Yeah, develop their confidence, and they've got to find a running game and find it in a hurry because they're becoming a little bit too one-dimensional with the passing game. Some of the other scores in the Big 12 last week, Iowa State suffers their first loss of 17-5 to in-state rival Iowa. Missouri absolutely decimates Nevada, 69-17, guys. That's a little bit of a scary score, especially when you compare the Texas Tech-Nevada game to it.
Well, one thing, it's what you expect from Missouri because Missouri a terrific offensive football team. They're about as good as it gets offensively,
right?
Not just in the Big 12, but also nationally. With you have Chase Daniel and the weapons that he has on offense. Macklin obviously is coming through in a big way in his sophomore season. No sophomore slump there. I don't make too much of comparing Missouri's outcome against Nevada to Texas Tech's outcome against Nevada for a couple of reasons. One, for Nevada, the setting obviously is completely different. You're not at home in front of your fans, you're on the road. And then the other thing is, I think Nevada probably put a whole bunch of, obviously, preparation time and emotional investment into that Tech game. And then to have to come back and go on the road, play a top 10 team in the country on the road the following week, I think it's difficult for them probably to get up, especially considering also that they lost Luke Lippincott, their most, well-known offensive player for the season the year before in the Tech game.
Right. You know, you look at some of the other scores in the conference, and then we'll go over some of the highlights of those games. Oklahoma State, no problem with Missouri State, a 57-13 win. Baylor on Thursday night, they get by Washington State. They start the season 2-1 after a 45-17 win. Nebraska, the Black Shirts, are they back? They hold New Mexico State to 7 points with a 38-7 win, and Oklahoma absolutely makes a statement at Washington, a 55-14 win. You know, you talk about some of those games, Don, and you know what stands out to you as one of the highlights in the Big 12 from those slates?
Well, obviously, I think probably the Baylor win against Washington State that's had to have been, I think, the biggest night in Waco since the Aggies, since that victory that they had over the Aggies, the 35-34 overtime game a few years back. And they have some hope now because they have somebody that they can kind of hang their hat on, and Robert Griffin and what he's done here at the start of the season. You know, we talked in the early going and in the summer going in that they had a lot of good options at quarterback and who was going to be the guy, and Griffin's kind of jumped out there now and not only taken that role, but also I think kind of has shown that he could be a guy who can kind of give them an identity and a game breaker offensively that they really lacked the last several years.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the Baylor hasn't had that big-time playmaker, the guy who you know is going to make the play when they need it most, not to mention a terrific athlete. I think Griffin, you know, if he can stay healthy, he's going to have a pretty good 4-year career at Baylor University, and I think the Bears are looking for a major upswing as long as he's there.
Yeah, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say it right now. Baylor will ruin somebody's season before this year is over. They will upset someone they're not supposed to behind that talented freshman right there.
Before we get just too completely overboard, though, with Robert Griffin, and I don't disagree, obviously, with what has been said, but we have to remember, here's a guy who's a true freshman, second semester, and I think he's also going to have one of those nights or days where somebody throws a really good defense at him, confuses him, maybe he throws 3 or 4 interceptions, and then he'll have to battle through some things. I don't think it'll all be fine and dandy for him in his first time to start.
His lumps are going to come on the head at some point in time.
At some point, sure.
But you've got to look ahead and say, well, in a year or two down the road, like I said, if he stays healthy, this guy's going to be pretty good. He's already shown some flashes now as a freshman. And granted, he will have struggles. Things won't always be as easy as he's made it look so far. But I think he's got a pretty bright future.
Yeah, and guys, the thing I think it stands out to me from last week in the Big 12 is Oklahoma State and that win over Missouri State. 3 running backs, over 100 yards rushing. At what point are we allowed to say that this team is a legit contender in the Big 12 South? Is it too early?
Not necessarily too early. And obviously, Missouri State is not Missouri. Nobody's confusing those two teams. I said this, I think, last week. The thing that impresses me about Oklahoma State is they kind of have an identity under Gundy offensively. With Texas Tech, they're going to throw the football, and the receivers may come and go, the quarterbacks may come and go, but they're always going to be able to do it well. And I think with Oklahoma State, what you see is the running backs may come and go, but they can bring in more running backs and continue to run the football effectively. You mentioned 3 guys over 100 yards. I think the most notable of those 3 to me was Keith Toston getting back on track. Here's a running back who year before last was part of a rotation, and he ran for about 600 yards. Texas kid out of Angleton, and then last year had just a really miserable season. He had all sorts of trouble fumbling the football and completely fell out of favor. They couldn't trust him anymore because he couldn't hang on to the football. So I think he probably went through one of those times where he maybe started taking the football to class and taking the football to the dining hall and all those sorts of things. And last week he jumps back into it and runs for, if I remember correctly, about 140, 150 yards, something like that. So you get one of your veteran backs back in the mix. Kendall Hunter now 3 weeks in a row with 100 yards rushing, and they mix in another JUCO transfer who goes over 100.
And Adam, you look at Nebraska. Is there a rumor we're here in Lincoln this week that everybody's doing going to the T-shirt shop to get the black shirts back? They held New Mexico State to 7 points. Is it time to jump on the Cornhusker bandwagon, as several of our friends in the coaches poll are, giving them a ton of votes, technically 28th in the country?
I don't think so. The Cornhusker fans, have all the fun you want. Have fun beating up on a bunch of nobodies. That's great. 7 points to New Mexico State, you should shut them out if you have a great defense. Nebraska hasn't done anything yet. They haven't proven anything. All they've done is they haven't fallen flat on their faces. Wait till Big 12 play starts.
How about Virginia Tech?
I'm a Nebraska skeptic also. I think Bo Pelini's doing this right. At least they're kind of building their way gradually into the season. They're not biting off more than they can chew in non-conference either. And so they get an easy win against a team that they should obviously are better than, should be better than.
Right.
But still a whole bunch to learn about Nebraska when they do finally go on the road. And that's still not until October 11th when they come to Lubbock. And still some rebuilding the talent to go on there for Bo Pelini and Lincoln.
And I think we'll learn a little bit when Virginia Tech comes calling to Lincoln, and they've got a new quarterback now. We might find a little bit more right there after that football game. And guys, Oklahoma over Washington. If you got to see any part of this game whatsoever, this team's scary. They are legit and big time scary in a game where, Adam, you and I kind of had those apprehensions like, oh boy, is this the fall flat in non-conference play? No, thank you.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think I don't think the Sooners. There may not be a game where they fall flat. I'm not saying they're gonna win every game they have, but I think they're legitimately one of the top probably 3 or 4 teams in the country. You might want to put Missouri in there, but I think Oklahoma's better than Missouri. And until Missouri can beat Oklahoma, it'll always be that way. You look at Sam Bradford. He's pretty much had quite a start, just as well as Chase Daniel from Missouri. 12 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. He's really clicking on all cylinders. The Sooners are in general. Offense, defense, everything.
And Don, are we seeing a Michael Crabtree-esque, development in Ryan Broyles? That kid had a couple runs Saturday that were outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, one of the early, leaders for best newcomer in the Big 12 Conference. And you guys are right. I think one of the things that kind of jumps out is, BYU beat UCLA 59-0.
Yes.
But then only beat Washington 28-27. And so, I mean, Washington plays a one-point football game against a team that's ranked about top 15 in the country now, but gets completely annihilated by the Sooners.
So, Don, are you saying that OU would beat UCLA 156-0?
It could be something like that.
All right, guys, and you look at this week in the Big 12 Conference, I guess they're going to try to play every night this week if you look at the schedule, and it starts on Wednesday night, a very odd game as Kansas State returns a trip to Louisville, and we finally maybe get to see a little bit more about the Wildcats and what they can do.
I think this will be a tough game for Kansas State, having to go to Louisville, playing on a Wednesday. Players aren't used to that. They're used to kind of gearing up for Saturdays. They have their routines. Obviously Louisville has to go through the same thing, but they don't have to travel. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how Kansas State comes out and performs.
Then on Thursday, you have West Virginia going to Colorado. The Buffaloes are one of those teams that do not at all believe in playing easy non-conference schedules.
Right.
They still play West Virginia coming up this week, and I believe they have Florida State as well. But I think a good opportunity for them to see if they can get a big victory, because West Virginia obviously showed during the first week that they're human under now that Rich Rodriguez is gone. They still kind of have some things to learn about themselves.
Yeah, I think Colorado can win this game, especially playing at home. West Virginia's still in the rankings. They got thumped by East Carolina. So I don't know. I think this is a game Colorado can win.
Yeah, and containing Pat White's never an easy task. So we'll wait and see how that goes early on before we jump on that train too quick. And then Friday night it continues, Adam. The Baylor Bears, they get a tougher task going to UConn. That'll be a tough game for them to come out of with a win. That's
right. UConn has looked pretty good. They've got the second leading rusher in the country in Donald Brown. He's already got 8 touchdown runs, which I think matches his total from last year. I don't know. Baylor's looked better. UConn's looked better. This will be interesting to see how this one plays out. My guess is Griffin coming off a huge game, having to go all the way up Connecticut. The Huskies are going to win this one.
Right.
I just feel some concern for our colleagues down at the Waco Tribune-Herald, because this is 2 Friday nights in a row that the Bears have played. So they've had to mix their Baylor coverage on a Friday night with their high school football coverage. That's got to be a killer.
Aren't you glad Texas Tech plays on Saturday, Don?
Yeah, I'm glad.
Not to mention you have to go to UConn to cover. Not exactly a easy trip for anyone to make. And guys, the rest of the Big 12 slate on Saturday, we can talk about some of these. Buffalo visits Missouri for what could be another cakewalk for the Tigers.
As long as it's not the Bills.
As long as it's not the Bills. But Turner Gill has done a much improved job with Buffalo. That guy really deserves a lot of accolades for what they've taken them. Other games on the slate, Miami, Florida, they come into Texas A&M. That could be ugly for the old Aggies as we continue their struggles. Rice at Texas. After a week off, Texas had to cancel because of the hurricane that didn't rain any in Austin. I'm sure Mac Brown is oh so pleased about that. Sam Houston State, you know how Mangino likes his cupcakes. He's back up there. They're back up there to play the Jayhawks. And then Iowa State at UNLV. Do any of those games really pop out to you, Adam, and say, watch out for something special here?
Well, not really. Buffalo, Missouri, yawn. Sam Houston State, Kansas, yawn. Iowa State, UNLV, who cares? I'm looking at Miami, at Texas A&M. These are 2 used to be great programs. Both of them have kind of slipped a bit in recent years. Miami's not. I don't think Miami's that much better than Texas A&M. Maybe this year they are. I think Miami's going to win that one, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a close game. I'm interested to see how the Texas Longhorns will respond after taking that week off.
Right.
They're playing at home. You say, well, it's Rice. They should kill Rice. The Rice has looked pretty decent so far. Like I said, Texas coming off the 2-week layoff. A lot of those guys, it may not have rained in Austin, but a lot of those guys are from Houston. A lot of the players are from Houston, their families. It's really close in proximity. So, it probably hasn't been the easiest time for the Longhorns. So it'll be interesting to see how they come out and play.
The Iowa State UNLV game, I think, is kind of interesting to me. UNLV has a victory against Arizona State, which is ranked number 15 in the nation at the time. So they've knocked off a Pac-10 team. Iowa State's got to go on the road after, of course, the huge emotional, the always emotional rivalry game against Iowa. They look pretty good in that game, and we're fighting and scrapping. It's 3-3 game well into it, and then Iowa pulls out the 17-15 victory. Pretty good barometer, I think, for Gene Chizik's team. That they played the Hawkeyes right down to the wire, had a chance to win that game. But again, going on the road to UNLV after UNLV's beaten Arizona State, going to be a pretty good challenge for them.
Yeah, and Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, by the way, are on bye weeks. They'll be off until next week. And guys, that's going to do it for this episode of the Red Raider Report. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Campus Design at 98th and Quaker. Get down there and check them out. And as always, all year for Don and Adam's stories, go to redraiders.com, a product of LubbockOnline.com and the Lubbock Avalanche-Journal. I'm Zach Long for Don and Adam. We'll see you next time.